Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me and Parul today. So my name is Alice Chance and I am the careers coach at Manchester and Leeds Code. And I'm joined by the lovely Parul Singh, who is a senior JavaScript recruitment from Manhattan Partners. We're going to be doing I think probably one of the best lunch and learns that we've actually done so far. I think probably the most useful one, and hopefully something that everyone will take with them in their career. So it's all going to be around negotiations and negotiating yourself the best salary that you can achieve. Parul, I don't know if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, of course. It's amazing to be back. I think the last one we did was on personal brands, and being a recruitment consultant, been in the industry for just over 3 years now, helping people learn to empowering them to negotiate and be able to get like the best package possible. Because I can tell you right now, the first offer that's on the table is never always the best one. And I think, obviously, in line with what Manchester Codes do, like being a boot camp, and I think there's an assumption that you can't really like negotiate your first role and package as well, which is definitely not true. So I'll be sharing some tactics, we'll be doing a role play, I'll be sharing some case studies as well to show you that it's absolutely possible. So I've been working on the presentation for a while, which doesn't seem to want to load, so you probably have to give me a second before I can share the screen.
It's
So
okay, because
bear with me.
we've still got people joining us. Just to talk you through how we're going to be doing it then. So it's going to be about an hour. So like Parul said, we're going to be doing a presentation, we're going to be doing a role play, then we're going to have time for a question and answer at the end. As always with all of our events, please get involved. Please feel free to comment. If you're watching through YouTube, add as many comments as you like through YouTube. Some we may discuss during the event, some we may leave to the end. So we will see your message, so don't think we've missed it. If you can't watch all of the event and you have to leave for whatever reason, it's recorded. It will go straight onto our YouTube page, so you can just watch it and pick it up whenever you'd like. If you'd like any of the information afterwards, please feel free as well to get in contact with myself or Parul, and we will be able to help you out, put you in the right direction. But yeah, I think this is a great session. It's something Parul actually posted about it on her LinkedIn, saying that she'd spoken to a boot camper, not one of ours, who'd had some like not really had the right advice. And I thought to myself that it wasn't really something that we really spoke about. And a lot of the time, I think Parul's right, that people do just go for the first salary that they get offered. We want to try and, I guess, add some value to that. So negotiations can be tricky, and we want to make it an easy process.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a really good example, actually. And I think it's just an example, as well as don't be afraid to reach out to people for advice and support, because she is somebody that is in one of the Slack communities that I'm in, and we're actually spoken directly before, and she just reached out to me. We had some calls, we had some conversations, and she was able to negotiate so well. So I'll be using some of those examples. And also, you'd be pleased to know, finally managed to open this up. I decided to go onto Chrome instead. So do you want me to get onto sharing the slides now?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Let me just do that 1 second. And yeah, just as Alice said, don't feel like you want to wait. If you want to wait until the end to basically ask your questions, just feel free to pop them in the chat, and if they're relevant to kind of that topic that we're talking about, we'll just address them there and then if not, get into the Q&A, as it obviously is recorded. So I know there's a few people I know who signed up that have to duck out at 1 o'clock for meetings and things, and also you'll get my contact details, so if you have any questions that come to mind afterwards, feel free to reach out. I don't bite. Can you see that screen? Can you see that screen now?
I can, yeah, we're ready. That was good.
Ready. Okay, amazing. So I'm just gonna go on this window. Okay, cool. So this is the salary negotiation workshop, and we are talking about navigating what can be quite a difficult conversation, and basically how you can achieve a win-win scenario. So I'm super excited. This is a little bit on the, it's not comprehensive, we've got a few other bits in there, but this is essentially the workshop structure that we're going to go through. We're going to talk about what is negotiation and why it is important, how you will do your market research to know what kind of like salary to pitch yourself at. We'll go through some key negotiation tactics and tips, talk to you about how you maximize your take-home pay without necessarily increasing the base pay. 7 key elements of negotiation. Alice and I are also going to do a little bit of a role play as well, aren't we? So we've got 2 role plays that we're going to go through. One is about the initial conversation when you're entering a process for a role, and how you set those expectations, and then also the kind of conversation that you would probably have right at the end when you're actually at that offer stage. And then also approaching the pay review conversation as well. I know that was something that you wanted us to talk about, and I can see some of the words have been cut off there, so I'm not really sure why it's actually done that. So, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
So this is me, a little bit about me and my background, I suppose. So 25 years old, I'm a Scouser living in Manchester. I've got just over 3 years of recruitment experience. I'm currently working as a senior JavaScript consultant at Manhattan Partners. So we're a fully remote startup, but mostly based around Manchester. Outside of work, I am also learning to code. So I've been doing that for like a couple of months now, haven't I? So it's been really good just to understand like both sides of like the conversation. So just going beyond like being what a recruiter usually means.
Mm-hmm.
I am also a mental health, ADHD, and DEI advocate as well. So, if any of you are probably already connected to me on LinkedIn, I'm fiercely passionate about raising a lot of the issues which we face in tech recruitment around like all of those topics, pretty much. And basically helping people that may not necessarily actually get that kind of like support, who are like underrepresented. And off the back of that, I do offer some like informal mentoring as well. So a lot of these people are women in tech, people with ADHD, people with disabilities. So if that's something you'd be interested in talking to me about, I will have some capacity probably before Christmas or in the new year. I'm also co-organizer of like Manchester Web Meetups, so absolutely love meetup events. Work with Code Your Future as well, who provides coaching and education to people from disadvantaged backgrounds and speaking and stuff like that. So that's all the boring stuff. And then outside of work, absolutely love going to the gym, love cooking, love trying new restaurants, love reading as well. I've got some book recommendations at the end too, so don't worry, we'll have all of those in there. And if you scan that link, hopefully probably should have mentioned that first, but if you have a chance, if you just want to scan that QR code, it will take you to my Linktree page, where you can basically get all of like my social links, like my LinkedIn and Twitter and all that good stuff.
Parul is definitely one to follow on all the social medias. She's a perfect example of somebody who's created a really good personal brand for herself. The way she presents herself online, she just comes across as like the go-to person, and she is as well. But she's not one of those people that just says things without any action. She puts actions into all of her work, and yeah, it's very commendable what Parul does. She's not like the other recruiters, so.
Oh, thank you so
You should
much.
all get to know her if you don't already know her.
Oh, that
That's
means a
okay.
lot. Alice, you were honestly so kind, and you know my inbox is open. Just feel free to send me a request on like any of the platforms. I'm always happy to chat and give advice and support. So when we're talking about negotiation, you know, if you just look up a pretty like standard definition, negotiation is a strategic discussion to resolve an issue in a way that like both parties are happy. Each side is basically going to try and persuade the other side to agree with their point of view. So it's like avoid an argument, but being able to reach some form of compromise. So ultimately, you want it to be a win-win situation. You don't want this to be completely one-sided. We negotiate in like our daily lives, you know, if you're negotiating with your friends, like what bar you're going to go to, like for drinks, negotiating with your partner, like what you're going to make for dinner, negotiating with your team, you know, which like features you're going to prioritize. So you do this all the time. So you can actually apply a lot of these principles in like the wider scope of life. And being in recruitment for over 3 years, I've been negotiating as a part of my job every day. And I tell you now, because I practiced it so much, I think, and not in a bad way, but I think I'm quite good at getting like what I want now. Well, like still keeping,
It's a
well,
good
still
skill
keeping
to have in every element of your life. And
really,
the way you
yeah,
just explained it just made, I think that will make sense to so many people, because it even did to me. Like, we do negotiate in so many other ways, but I don't know why
yeah,
salary negotiation seems so scary. Like, you're right, like you negotiate what you're going to have for dinner, and you negotiate like what you're going to be doing at
yeah.
the weekend. So you're right, we do it in so many elements of our life, but I think people just get salary negotiations and just think, I don't know how to do that.
You don't have to like prepare for it like you're like a general going into like a war zone. It can just be, I mean, that's one of the elements I was going to talk about, is like shifting your mindset to just
Mhm.
embrace negotiation as like a part of life. And I think as well, it sets a really good example for you to like people that like you may not necessarily know, that you're somebody that like stands up for like what you believe in, what you're talking about.
Definitely.
So you can, yeah, 100%, like you can see it as a positive. And to be honest, Alice, I really wish that we maybe didn't need to be doing this workshop and be having this conversation. I really wish we were in a world where, we were really transparent about, what's the salary bracket for like this like developer
Mhm.
role, and then what people ask for within that bracket, and then you get it for them. But, unfortunately, it's not the case. It's still pretty much like a necessity. Um, so I feel like this is what sometimes people think happens when like you negotiate. It's so scary, right? I think my opinion is I think as Brits, we're really awkward when it comes to talking about money. Like,
Yeah.
if you've ever had that conversation with like your partner, your family, or your friends about like, you know, I never talk to people about like how much I'm making, I just think it's a really awkward conversation to have. And I was talking to somebody yesterday who had negotiated her salary for her first role. And I said, what was it that made you actually do it? Because it's not that common. And she said, she follows a lot of like American tech people on Twitter. And
Mhm.
it's such a normalized conversation. It's a normal part of the process to like negotiate at like your offer stage. And she said
Yeah.
that's why we did it. So if we can embrace that mindset, then like nothing bad is actually going to happen. And also I think there's a slight, I mean, if anybody agrees or disagrees with this, like feel free to discuss it like in the chat. But I think sometimes people are scared to do it because they're worried that their offer might be rescinded. So Alice, I don't know if like you found this, but like some of the junior developers, they're like, oh, this is
Yeah.
what we can get, I'm grateful
Yeah,
for it.
definitely. And I think transparency is huge when it comes to negotiations and salaries. And like you said, like having that conversation, have it with you cohort, like people on your cohort. What salary are you applying for? What salary is this? Um, but yeah, I think people are afraid that it might give a bad impression of the person.
Mm.
They might think, oh no, this person's greedy or whatever. But you know your worth, be confident in your abilities, and I think that's a really important skill to have.
Yeah, and I think it absolutely like depends on the scenario as well. I think there's a right way and a wrong way to go about things. So,
Mhm.
like for example, if there's kind of like a certain salary that you have basically agreed as a range at the beginning of the process, you get
Mhm.
right to the offer stage and you'd like 10, 15K more, or
Yeah,
I'm not accepting it. I think that can leave like a bad taste in like
yeah,
people's
yeah.
mouths. So it's not being like completely outlandish with it. And that's why I say like this is so subjective. Like all of this advice is going to be completely different scenario by scenario. So that's why I'd always advise actually just talking to people like me, talking to people like Alice, other
Yeah.
people in your network about that specific situation and get advice on that. Like that's what I literally help people do, like day in and day out. So like in my whole career, I've never had or even heard of anybody that I've worked with have an offer taken back
No,
because
I've
they've
never
like
heard of
tried to
it.
negotiate it. I've never ever heard of it. It's an extremely uncommon scenario. And like I said, as long as you've been reasonable with the negotiation and the requests, I think it's completely fine. And like to be honest, if it's a company which are gonna like completely take back the offer just because of like a negotiation, I think that raises quite a big red flag, to be honest. It tells me that, you know, they just kind of want to pay people as less as possible, and it's probably not really somewhere that you want to work at. So the worst thing, I mean, the absolute worst case scenario in these situations is you're stuck with the original offer. They're not going to take it back, and you still can make a decision from there whether you want to take it or not. So the place won't start to burn down, basically. So, I mean, what happens when you actually negotiate? You get more money. Of course, that is the crux of like what this talk is, you know, like extra money is great. Like, who doesn't like a little bit more? Like I said, the first offer is almost highly unlikely to be the most that they can offer. What happens is, and I'll talk about this later, is I always recommend going, trying to get my hands on the screen. It's the camera's flipped, by the way, in case anybody's wondering, and that's why I have no idea what's going on here. So that's why I would say go in higher than what you want, because then the company is always going to go a little bit lower, and you negotiate and you work your way to the middle, and that's basically like a winning scenario for like both people. And just think about like what you can do with that extra 5, 7, 10K at every step of your career. So if you're always going to be 5K lower than what you were on before, like just think how much that actually accumulates, you know, like all the way through. So really think about that. And it's an uncomfortable situation. I'm not denying it. I still, you know, it can be quite difficult. I negotiate on other people's behalf with like my clients, so it's not even me. But like Alice, if I said to you, I want you to go to Market Street in Manchester, I want you to hop on 1 foot for 5 minutes, you're gonna feel like a right tit. But if I said I'd give you an extra 10 grand for that, would you do it? Yeah, who wouldn't do it? I would do it. I'll do it riding a unicycle. I'll do it like singing and dancing, whatever you wanted. It's a very short period of feeling uncomfortable for a good bit of extra money. So these are some of the elements of negotiation, and I'm actually not going to go into those too much because we're actually going to cover it like through the presentation. But it's like covering like your research, negotiating right from the beginning, learning how to communicate. So active listening. So if you don't know a lot about this, I would look into that. Shifting your mindset to embrace negotiation as an absolutely normal part of life. Writing a brag document. So I'd be really interested to get some engagement from the chat actually on this, just ahead of that slide. So has anybody actually heard of a brag document, or has anybody actually like written one or kept one before? So it'd be good to kind of see that. And then also your scenario is going to be, everybody's personal situation is different. So consolidate what your hard and soft negotiation points are. Like, what do you know that you don't want to basically give up? What is it that you can't move from? And what are the things that maybe you can, you know, you're not too like fussed about, you know, maybe like an extra pension contribution or like a work from home budget and things like that. And also learning how to like pace yourself, and knowing that you do not have to give an answer straight away. It's absolutely okay to say, you know what, I'm going to go away and just think about this a little bit, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. Because I guarantee actually most of the time they'll actually probably adjust the offer, because they might be worried that, you know, you're kind of
I think people think they don't accept their offer straight away, that the offer is going to be retracted, or it's going to seem like you're not interested. But I think I've had people who I've worked with that have been offered, you know, salaries at 100K plus, and they've waited a week to answer whether they're going to accept it or not, because they want to make sure it's the right decision. Not giving an answer straight away isn't a bad thing when it comes to salary negotiations and accepting salaries. People understand that you've got to make a big choice, and it's a big decision changing jobs.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. So yeah, interested to see like some of the comments in the chat. So a couple of people are not really kept or like heard of like a brag document before. So I've got loads of resources for you all as well, like lots of books, lots of articles that you can like go away and read. There's only so much that we can actually cover, you know, in this time, and I do want to leave loads of room for sort of like the Q&As, so we'll try and finish this at like half past. But I'm gonna just stop the screen share for a moment, because we're gonna go into the role play. So are you ready, Alice?
I am nearly ready.
Yeah, no worries. But just for everybody that's in the stream at the moment, because I want to actually do this role play so I can refer back to points so you actually know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, it's one thing for me to just sit here and talk about like the theory and the kind of like tips and things like that, but it's another thing actually applying it. So Alice is going to be the
Hiring manager.
recruiting. Yeah, she's going to be the hiring manager. So this could be internal recruiter, agency recruiter, could be the dev manager, anybody. And I'm going to be the candidate who's doing the negotiation. And we're going to go through 2 role plays on this. So we're going to do one, which is your negotiation at the start of the process. So when you're having initial conversations about the role, and then another one, which is on like the offer stage. So,
Cool.
well, at the start of the process, just for context for everybody listening, my hard negotiation, which I'm not willing to flex on, is accepting a salary between 30 to 32k. So just keep that in mind. So, Alice, do you want to start off?
I think you'd be a great fit for our junior front end developer role, Parul. What salary are you currently on?
It's great to hear that you think that I might be a good fit for this role. I've done some research on the company. It sounds absolutely amazing. And one of my friends from bootcamp actually joined you a few months ago. At this time, without fully understanding the scope of the role and expectations, I'm not really like comfortable discussing a number at this stage. What's the range that you have on offer?
Okay, we're looking at around 28 to 32k, really, dependent on the person and their experience.
Okay, I think I could work with that. And what are the other benefits in the package, like bonus, pension contribution, holidays?
We match your pension contribution up to 5% and have an annual bonus of up to 10% and 25 days holidays plus bank holidays.
Okay, great. And then I'll just pretend we've had a conversation about like the actual role and requirements now. So going back to that, thank you for going through all of that with me, Alice. Doing some research on the current market and speaking to other people who are in similar roles and understanding the expectations. Of course, with it being a startup, there's a little bit more expected than some of the other roles that I'm looking at in bigger companies. So using these data points, I'd like to go forward at 35k for this role. I also do think my past experience before going to bootcamp as a tech recruiter brings a lot of transferable skills to the table, like building relationships, communicating technical jargon to non-technical people, organizational skills. Do you think you could work with that?
I think you're right with some of your points. So, and I think potentially we could consider you at 32k.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting number. If we could agree to increasing that to 35k after passing probation, I'd love to get going with the process.
Yeah, that would work for us.
Okay, sounds great.
That would work
Would
for
you mind
us.
sending everything that we discussed through on an email, just so I've got written confirmation of everything?
Of course, I'll send that over after our call.
Sounds good. Okay, obviously put ourselves on like the spot a little bit, but in that negotiation, we're using some of the tactics like agreeing an increase upon passing probation. So this is a really good trick to, I guess, maybe make them feel like, you know, they're getting like a little bit of a better deal. Okay, I mean, I was hoping for 35, but we can look at 32 and increase it to 35 after probation. It's only a couple of months, and this is something that I actually did do with the junior developer from bootcamp that we talked about earlier. Also note that at the end, always ask for written confirmation. Once you've had this conversation, you do not want to just have a verbal discussion and then not have anything in writing from the company, and it ends up coming back to bite you because it's like, oh, you discussed 32k. I wasn't actually aware of that, you know, once you get to like the offer stage. And then also asking about like the full package and like bonus and things like that, because, you know, if there's some companies which do offer like a pretty decent bonus. And one thing that I didn't do is also asking how the bonus is. I was basically assessing like how it's paid out, because some people were like, oh, we do like a 10% bonus, but then it turns out that they haven't really paid it out to anybody in years. Is it individual performance? Is it team performance? Is it company performance? Do they pay it out yearly? Do they pay it out like quarterly? Like, get all this information, and again, ask for it all in writing. Like, being able to negotiate over the phone or Zoom is so much better because, you can read somebody's body language. They can also really hear like the sincerity in your voice, that like you're actually really excited about this role, and obviously not coming across like greedy or anything, but you do not have proof in writing. So definitely always get the receipts on that. So yeah, and then in terms of, okay, so let's say like got through like the whole process. Alice is now a different hiring manager. She was the internal recruiter. She's now the CTO. So this is actually a different person. So this might actually happen. So that's why I wanted to do it that way. So we're now at the offer stage. So they've sent me an email. They've let me know that they're really, really happy and they'd like to extend an offer. Can you jump on a Zoom meeting to discuss this? This is where we're at right now. So let's start off with this one.
Cool. Thanks so much for meeting with us, Parul. We absolutely love you. We really want you to join the team. So we'd like to offer you 28,000 with a provisional start date of 5th of December.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Alice. I'm absolutely over the moon. I'm really, really excited to get started. So excited to be part of the team and really can't wait to get stuck in. Just before we finalise the contract, I wanted to discuss the complete package. In the initial conversations, we discussed a starting salary of 32k, increasing to 35 upon passing probation, with the internal recruiter, and an annual bonus of 10%.
Right. That's a little bit higher than other candidates that we've got currently interviewing.
I really appreciate that. With my market research and also a few of the other roles that I'm in process for, the market is currently offering an absolute minimum of 30k for junior roles. I am actually in process with Booking.com, who are looking at a starting salary of 35. However, I am much more interested in joining your team, especially with how smooth the process has been. Like, made a really good impression. I think it speaks volumes about the great culture. If we can increase on 30k, if we can agree on 30k starting salary with an increase to 35 on passing probation, I'd be happy to accept right away. So you can do that if you know in your head that this is something like this, like being assertive, like right at the end. So yes, you can go away and think about it if it's something that like it's not something that you might want to agree on. But if you know right here, right now, because I said right at the beginning, I wanted 30 to 32. So this is a really good deal, getting it up to 35 after a couple of months. So if you like feel free to just basically say, look, if you can do this, I will accept right now, because people don't want the faff. They don't want the faff, they don't want the back and forwards. Yes, they're going to say, oh, we've got other candidates at like other salaries and stuff. You've already demonstrated your value to the company. Otherwise, they wouldn't be making you an offer, right? So play that to your advantage.
I think that's a big thing. Like, people want you to join their business. It costs money to interview people. They want you to join the team. They want you specifically. So be confident in that and confident in yourself. I think that's so important.
Yeah, definitely. Does that sound like any of the negotiations that that you've been doing recently with any of the students?
So we've had a thing recently where I think students have had quite a few interviews and they've been a bit, and then they've received offers and then they've not told other companies that they've been interviewing or received other offers. So they've kept that to themselves instead of using that to their own advantage. So like you did on the role play, how you said you were interviewing at Booking.com and you're interviewing them at that salary, that only heightens your position. Whereas I think sometimes the students are afraid that might, I guess it shows, I don't know whether it's like come across as like disloyal or whatever, but yeah, I think definitely if you have another offer from another company, tell everyone you're interviewing with, email them. Even if your interview is not for 2 weeks, email them and say, I've got an offer. Can you bring my interview forward? This is what, even tell them what the offer is.
Yeah, it actually really helps. I remember when I was like a fresh-faced grad and I was talking to the internal recruiter for like my first tech recruitment role, and he basically said, he was like, are you interviewing anywhere else? And I was just like, oh my god, like panic mode. Like, I don't want to seem like I'm disloyal, but honestly, there's such a skills gap in tech right now. So don't feel like you can't actually use this as leverage.
So this isn't, and I just thought I'd put this up because this is
Yeah.
from a hiring manager, so it's a great message. So missing out on a candidate you want to hire for the sake of 3 to 4K is very short-sighted, especially with the market as it is. What feels like a big ask to you isn't to them, and that's so true. So thanks for saying that, Chris, because it's nice to have a bit of backup on it. But yeah, I'll add the presentation back.
Yeah, no, I think it's really good to have it from like a hiring manager's like perspective as well. Like honestly, people don't really want the faff. They don't want the faff. They really like
it's
you. They want to make an
annoying. It's
offer.
annoying
Yeah.
interviewing and organising interviews and going back and forth and finding time in everyone's diaries. Like if they find somebody, they want to employ you and they want to have you in their team. So
Yeah, they obviously really, really want you.
yeah.
So when you're doing your like research, you need to start with a number in your head. Your negotiator doesn't need to know this right at the beginning anyway, but you need to have something. If you go in unprepared, I always say, like, my favorite phrase is like, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So there's a couple of things that you can do, and I'm absolutely not biased here whatsoever, but I can tell you agency recruiters are your best source of information for this. Connect with them, speak to them, like send your CV, see if you can have a chat with them, even if they don't have any junior roles, and just be like, oh, hey, like I was going forward at like this company. I wondered what kind of like salary you think, I should maybe like pitch at, like this is my background, like blah, 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 blah. And the market is changing all the time. So if you did this a month ago, do it again. Keep doing it. If you're in a role and you're not looking, still do it. Still keep on top of the market. And we'll get to that later on when we talk about the kind of like pay review conversation as well. Have put a couple of other things on here, but if I'm honest, I think agency recruiters and I guess job adverts which actually have salaries on them are a good place to start. There
Yeah.
are also some online salary guides. So I am aware that there are some of the, the really big like recruitment companies that actually do publish like their salary guides and things like that. And there's like IT Jobs Watch as well. Internal recruiters from other companies, even if you're not going for a role. Glassdoor, I would take with a pinch of salt. I think everything about Glassdoor, I would just take with a pinch of salt because
Yeah,
I
same.
found like I found like some salaries can be accurate and some of them can be way, way off. So do not use this as your primary source of information. Is all I would say. And then when you're looking at the actual company research that you're going for a job for, speak to current employees there. If you're like connected with people, they're like another like mid-level, another like senior developers, just like connect with them and just say like, hey, I'm going for this role, and we'll be open to like just some really honest advice. What kind of like salary do you think I should be looking at, really? And also looking up, a lot of companies don't actually put their salaries on their direct job adverts. You'll find them more on like recruiter adverts, but sometimes they do have them. It's becoming a little bit more common, not as much as we'd like to see. If there's anything else that anybody does to kind of like benchmark the salary, then just feel free to like share it in the chat. But
Yeah, and ask as well. Don't be afraid to ask what the salary is. I think sometimes people feel that even asking what the salary is for a role is like an awkward conversation. I've spoke to people before and they haven't asked what the salary is until like they're getting offered for the role and they don't know what they're going to get offered. So just find out straight away. You don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste their time. Find out straight away what the salary is going to be for that position. And if it doesn't fit in with you, leave it. It's not the right opportunity.
yeah, definitely. And also, if it doesn't fit within your expectations, always ask if there is flexibility on that. And, I would hope that somebody who is dealing with the process, whether it's agency recruiter or an internal recruiter, will be completely honest with you. Because I have had that where, the top end has been sort of like 70 and the candidate has wanted like 83, and I said I really want to like get a solid answer on this before we start the process, because you don't really want to like waste anybody's time. So yeah, and I guess leading on from that point is like, don't give a number first. So I feel like this meme hits close to home. So when people want to know, hey, what's your salary expectations? I mean, you want to know what like whatever like the salary ranges are. But the truth is that pretty much for like almost all roles, they will have a budget approved. They have finance departments. They have to look at their accounts and the money going in and out. Like for somebody to say, oh, we don't really have a range for this role. I don't think it's definitely not true. Just basically say like, what's the approved salary? And
Yeah.
also some Yeah, and also the salary that you're on is like completely irrelevant to the salary that you're going forwards for. Like as a recruiter, I never ask people for it. Like sometimes people just mention it in like conversation, but I don't need to know, the client doesn't need to know. There's so many reasons why people might be underpaid in their current role, especially people from like underrepresented groups as well. So I think it just perpetuates the gender pay gap like even more if we actually start asking those questions. So you don't need to say it. Like if somebody asks you that, you can say, I'm not comfortable with sharing that. It's fine. It's valid. You don't need to. So,
Yeah.
Got a couple of other things on here. So starting from a point of empathy, I know up to this point we've kind of been like, oh yeah, like negotiate, just go in, just try to get what you want and stuff like that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the person on the other end is a human. They are also trying to do their job. And yes, it is true that, a lot of the times companies will go at the low end because they'll just hope that people will just accept that they have to save money in some way or the other. That person is just doing their job, could be like the job on the line. So they're just always being kind and always being polite and just make them your best friend. If they're an agency recruiter or internal recruiter as well, just be besties with them because we're just going to want to do the best for you rather than like if you're being quite a difficult person. And like I said, is going between like email and phone as well. I think email is obviously powerful because you've got everything in writing, but a phone or even like a virtual meeting is great because I think you can actually leverage a lot of like the tactics, being able to read like the body language, like showing that you're engaged and that you're like empathetic. Can't do that over an email.
Yeah.
Also learn how to maximize your take home without increasing your base pay. From the offer, which is basically which they've suggested, basically if they won't budge on it, like what else can you do? And I'll go into that in the next slide. Leverage your other processes as well. So honestly, don't be afraid. And you can name drop. Actually, name dropping is more powerful. So like I do this as well. If like I've got candidates interviewing now, like other clients, I'm like, hey, I've got them an interview with like insert name company, and they're going forward that like 55K for this role, and it does help just like push that up a little bit. And again, I don't want to like obviously seem like I'm being like a little bit like biased here, but as as recruiters, we just to put it bluntly, like the more that the candidate gets, the more that we get. We work on a percentage basis. We are so incentivized to get you the best package possible. So I know that people have sometimes not had like great experiences with like recruiters and stuff like that, but been able to negotiate people's like some really good like packages. Obviously without screwing over like the client, of course, because we want to be like completely reasonable. But if you're working with a recruiter and they just deal with all the negotiations for you, so I feel like that's like pretty much a win-win situation, really.
Yeah, you're right, it is.
That's just got some repeated information. So the language that you use like really matters. And there's a book which I've referenced at the end, and it's called The Chimp Paradox. And I loved reading this book because it's basically just all about like when somebody says something that like you don't like, do you act out of emotion, which is like your chimp brain, because your chimp brain works faster than your human brain. And I've really had to kind of like beat that. I've had to beat it out of me. I used to do this a lot. I used to take things like really like personally and just end up getting yourself in a little bit of like trouble. So really recommend reading that book if you feel like you relate with that. So if you jump on an offer call and that you just like, oh, not even entertain that offer, like it's a bit disappointing, that's not what I asked for, kind of just that blame, negative kind of like language, like you don't have to like lick their boot. But some better phrases that you could use is like, could we consider X? Can we meet in the middle at Y? I could consider X if you can increase Y to Z. I feel like I'm in like algebra now. I'd really like to go away and think about this. Also being like thankful as well. So if you remember in the role play, the first thing that I said when you presented me with the offer is talking about it as if I'm going to accept it anyway. Well, not anyway, but basically talking about like, oh my gosh, like really excited to get going, get stuck in, like join the team. That's going to make them more inclined to help you get what you want because they're like, oh my god, like this actually really feels real now. And just saying like, I appreciate. So it's kind of like that softer language. Like I said, you're not a general going into war. Like it's a conversation. Like just be really nice to the person, but whilst being assertive. Whilst being assertive as well. So Now coming back to the first thing that we talked about really early on about brag documents. So if you, has this changed the size, by the way? Has it come up on there? Is it stuck?
No, it's not changed yet. Oh, there we go.
Oh, it's changed off, yeah. Don't know, it's just stuck then. So basically, a brag document is going to be your secret weapon for your interviews, your one-to-ones with your manager, your salary negotiations, your pay reviews, everything. So I've got an article at the end as well, which will talk to you in like a lot of depth, only so much I can cover. But what you want to start doing is on a Google document or Notion or whatever you use for note taking, is start making notes of like your key achievements, because you've got a lot of this like fuzzy stuff as well, which is really hard to actually measure by numbers, and you're going to forget that when it comes to all these conversations. So make your life a lot easier for yourself. And so talk about like people that like you're mentoring, maybe some of the input that you've had on key technical decisions. Have you helped out in like some of the interviews, some of the key project deliverables? And it's going to make it so much easier, especially when like you're leveraging like that salary, like that review and everything. So really recommend like reading that article, which does go into a little bit of detail. Now, maximizing the take-home pay without increasing your salary. So this is not even a full list. Like there are so many things that you can actually potentially negotiate on. You know, if you're getting to the point of the negotiation where you're at a bit of a crossroads, you feel like you're going around in circles, not really going anywhere with like the base pay, they're kind of stuck on that. It's still something you could work with, but not ideal, but maybe you really want the role. So talk about a bonus, but ensure that you get it in writing, that it's individual performance and it's paid out like quarterly or whatever it is. Pension contribution, you can ask them. I've just had this with the last candidate that I placed. So the salary was 2k lower than what he was looking for, but then they bumped up their pension contribution, which he was like really happy. So because they did that, he accepted it, even though the salary was slightly lower. Holiday allowance as well. So every like different things are different for different people. So standard holidays at the moment is pretty much 25 days plus bank holidays. And then they'll basically say, oh, you can like buy or sell holidays as well. But think about it, if you're buying more holidays, you're decreasing your take home pay if you know you're going to use a lot, like you like traveling and things like that. So if you ask for more holidays, that means nothing to them on paper. They're not actually paying you any more money, but you know that you're not going to lose money throughout the year when you're taking extra holidays. You've also got paid sick leave, paid mental health days, emergency leave. You've got like your work from home budget as well. So I'm not talking just laptop. I've got a client that offer a £1,000 per year work from home budget. So this is anything from plants, desks, standing desk, ergonomic chair, keyboard, whatever you want, stuff that that you probably end up paying for anyway, and ask them for it as a budget. It's a weird psychological thing. They're just more likely to approve this than a base salary. And packages are entirely customizable. And they got some other things as well. So like personal development budget. Are you already spending those on like courses and conferences, private medical and dental, extended maternity and paternity leave? This is a really good one because a lot of companies aren't really offering it at the moment. A wellness budget as well. So some people are like, oh, hey, like we'll cover your gym membership and things like that, childcare vouchers. So you can like customize this package.
100%. There's so many things
Yeah.
that I didn't even think about. I'm just like looking at them all like, wow. There's so many good things there that, we definitely need to use to our advantage, and definitely things that we need to look at and think over. Like I know there's some companies that will give you like, money to spend when you first join. Companies as well will like pay if you stay there for more than a certain number of years, and like look into all of this as well.
Yeah, 100%. Because they might be, like I said, if you're at a little bit of a crossroad, like, it can be a little bit easier just to come to a bit of an agreement. And yeah, I mean, Andrew just said in the chat, he said corporate floral site is around £500 per year. And ultimately, if that's the kind of stuff that like you really like and you pay for anyway, and it's actually valuable to the company, I can't see why they'd be like, no. So your negotiation goes beyond, just like signing the contract. You need in writing how and when your salary is going to be reviewed. So we'll talk about this on the pay review side. Increase on like passing probation, and always keep on top of like the market salaries. So almost at the end now, and I feel like my voice is going a little bit. I don't know if anybody missed at the start, but I've got like a chest infection. So like, it's just slowly starting to go. Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Yeah, I'm lucky I've not been like coughing up a lung, but apply like so many of like the same principles that we just talked about for like the pay review conversation, and make a difficult conversation easier for yourself. So agree on the timescales for reviews. So somebody I was talking to yesterday, she basically said that like they had got like in writing that they were going to review the salary every 6 months. So you're not sat there twiddling your thumbs waiting. There's developers that I spoke to who had been at their company for a year and a half at the same starting salary without a single review. Do not let yourself get into this
Yeah,
situation.
100%.
Keep your bag document. Timing is key as well. You know, maybe like you've just pushed like a big like product release and it's, you know, been like really successful. I always used to do this like with, I think I learned to negotiate from like a really young age, because I knew that when I wanted to ask my parents for something, I'd wait until I'd done something good or like they were in a good mood, because I knew like they were going to say yes to it. You know, when you want a friend to come over for like a sleepover or something. So think about your timing. And also when you're presenting your case, like, okay, this is, you know, you're looking at an extra 5-10k on this like pay review, right? You need to showcase your value that you've brought to the company. So talk about the project, talk about what you've delivered. And again, if you absolutely cannot bump up that base salary by the amount that you want, leverage the other parts of the package again. Like, you don't just need to do this off the stage, like you can do this like beyond that. Oh, I can't believe we've got to the end of the slides now. So I'll show you like the resources and stuff, and we'll go for like a little bit of like Q&A as well. Just before we get on to that, I've literally just made, it's a 3-question anonymous like feedback form. Obviously I've done like quite a lot of these talks and always open to like some constructive feedback, and would also love to see kind of like what you like would like to see in future. So if you could just scan that QR code. Alice, do you want me to get like the link to put in the chat as well?
Yeah, I can send the link around to everybody, but that's great. Thanks, Parul.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that would be really good.
That was a really super informative session. So I know we'll probably have people who will want to ask questions, talk about scenarios, talk about situations you've been in yourself where what could you have done better, and learn from past experiences. I think could be quite good. But feel free to ask some questions, pop some into the comments. So I think we may have had loads of comments throughout. So
yeah, a lot.
So we didn't.
Yeah, definitely a lot.
Questions, but lots of comments.
I know Thomas mentioned the briefcase technique. I'm not sure I've actually heard of that, but
no,
it might be a good one. I can look into it. I can add it onto the resources. Another good kind of like 2 more psychological tips that I've actually just thought about. Number 1 is like the compliment sandwich. I'm also not sure if like I'm really supposed to swear, but like the crap sandwich as well. So like if you're delivering feedback to somebody, you'll maybe like
crap's fine.
A shit sandwich. Basically, you're delivering some negative feedback, you know, constructive feedback to somebody, or maybe some bad news or something. Always bookend it with like good things. So it's kind of like in the middle, eases the way into it, and then leaves it with like a better taste in the mouth. Like, use this in like your negotiations as well. So like, thank you so much for the offer. Like, really looking forward to like joining the team. However, you know, the salary is a little bit lower than what we discussed in like the beginning. You know, if we could discuss this, we'd really love to get going. I think I'd probably start on like the 30th of June or something. So just kind of like sandwich it. But the the briefcase technique sounds quite interesting actually. Katie said that she makes sure that she has the next pay review in writing too, just so you know it's coming up. You could even stick it in your manager's diary. So you've just had a review, you've agreed to doing another one in 6 months. Just put it in, just put an invite in, so they know that you can't miss it. I think at the end of the day, I think this discussion will be very different if we'd have been having it a few years ago, Alice. I think right now it's a candidate's market. I think you have to know. You have to know your value.
Okay, Aish has asked a question. So, as a junior, I feel like I have nothing to brag about because everything I do, I'm proud of. I know everyone else in the team can already do. What kind of stuff could I brag about in a pay review? That's a really good question.
That's a good question, but I think everybody is an individual contributor to the team in different ways. So even though you might feel that there's other people in the team that are doing the same things, like, okay, you're working on like the same products and the same features, fine. You're contributing in other ways as well. There's some other things that, you know, like Andrew said, like completing projects like ahead of time, like taking on training. Have you done any internal sessions? Have you done some pairing with maybe like a brand new developer who's joined the team? Like, yes, you were junior, but you know, you've got some experience. There might be somebody joining who doesn't have any experience. Chairing any meetings, making any suggestions that have resulted you know, with like a good outcome, you know, maybe suggesting like a different kind of like testing framework or library to use, and that was actually like taken on board. I find it really hard to believe that there's something that you haven't done that you have done that like somebody hasn't. So that's why you need to keep the back document on. Literally, you can update it on like a weekly basis, on like a monthly basis.
Also think about small wins and like mini achievements. It doesn't have to be massive. It can be, and I think the smaller that you see your impact in a workplace, the more benefit and like this, you'll see your own value add, and that list will get bigger and bigger, and you won't even realize all the stuff that you're doing. Andrew said as well, stuff you've investigated and learned in your spare time too, which I think is really important. And I think some people don't consider like things you're doing externally will make a difference. But like anything you're doing for the tech community is in a whole, I think only highlights your company as well, because you're an advocate for your business, you're an advocate for the company you're working for. So anything you're doing online, if you're doing any external events or anything like that, that just goes in your favor. So just feel free to like, and don't be afraid to mention those sort of things.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good starting point, I think. And maybe not just put too much pressure on yourself to put like a lot in there. Sometimes it's about like
as well. And you could talk about doing stuff from Manchester Codes is definitely something you could add on there. Okay, cool. Another question. Hey Parul, thanks for the great tips. Just wondered if you had any advice for negotiating in context of an internal promotion.
Oh, this is a good one. And I really like talking about this because I think we'll all probably know that like retention rates in terms of like years is like drastically lower in tech right now. I don't have the numbers, but it's definitely quite a lot lower than it was like a year ago. And I don't think companies are at the moment kind of doing enough to, you know, like retain their like existing staff, but you have to make them see like the value, because I can tell you right now, like replacing you is much more expensive than that promotion and pay rise. So again, it's really like scenario based. So without kind of like knowing the context would be like really difficult. So let's say, for example, you know, you've joined a company as like a mid-level developer. Like one of the first things that you want to be doing when you've started, and you might feel like you're jumping the gun a little bit because you're not a senior yet, but I think it really shows like the proactivity. Like when you start to have your one-to-ones with your line manager, talk about the actual metrics that they use to like measure progression. So people, I have clients that actually have like a proper like actual like matrix and like OKRs for like tracking it, like basically. So get the expectations very early on. Do not just join as a mid-level developer, wait for a year and then say like, oh, hey, like when do I get reviewed to like be senior? Keep on top of the expectations, because what they expect from a senior is quite different from a mid-level. What they expect from a team lead is quite different from like a senior. And then keep track of that every time and review it when you're in your one-to-ones with your manager as well. Like, okay, so where are we up to with these? Has anything changed on these? And ask them for like honest feedback. You know, you asked me to do like some like code reviews and things, just wanted to see like what was there any feedback from like the other people on my side. Keep those channels of communication like really open as well. And like Andrew says, replacing engineers in this market is an absolute nightmare. And again, if you can do it over like face to face or even over like a Zoom or something, it's so much better. So maybe just kind of like coordinate with the day that like you and your manager both going to be in the office, and just say, hey Andrew, I was thinking, could we do our one-to-one in person this week, because we're like both in the office on Wednesday, and like try and do it then. So like, hey, do you want to like chat over like coffee or something? And think about what you want and what route you want to go down. Like if you're a senior and you're looking at like a promotion, like do you want to go be more of an individual contributor, like a principal engineer, or do you want to be a lead engineer, or do you want to do something more like architecture? And honestly, I say, like, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. The worst thing that they can say is no or not right now. And then you know what you have to do to actually work towards it. So I'd say just honestly bite the bullet. And I really hope that you kind of like have that relationship with your managers to just be really open about it. And if you feel like you're coming to a head and you're not really getting anywhere and obviously not necessarily feeling like valued or whatever, then know your point, which is, this is kind of, this is my cut off point now. And then that's the point when I say to people, if you try to address the situation, they're not really seeing the value in you, you're doing a lot, you're putting all the work and it's not getting recognized. And I feel like that's the point that you really should start looking. Oh, we've got a really good question that's just come in.
Yeah, so this is from Imran. Any suggestion how to best handle a situation where you made a mistake and communicated a target salary range and then later realized you're underselling yourself?
Okay, so before I start on this, Imran, can you clarify whether you've realized this during the interview process, at the offer stage, or after you've started? Because I think that's quite important, because I think the earlier on you've identified this mistake, the easier it is to basically fix it. I'm going to assume, if they don't reply in the chat by now, I'm going to assume this is, you've asked for a salary, you started at a company at this certain salary already, then you realize that you're being underpaid at like market rate. It sounds easier said than done, but try and avoid being in this situation in the first place. Like, ask recruiters what you should be on and don't accept an offer which is, drastically like lower to that. But you can't really kind of undo that. But I guess if it's during like the last stage, that is definitely a difficult conversation, because let's say you've asked for 25 and upon your research you know that it's minimum like 30. Again, approach the conversation with a bit of like empathy. Ask to book in a Zoom meeting and say that like you'd like to discuss like the conditions of the offer basically, and say, look, I don't want to like undersell myself here. I'll be honest, I haven't actually done like a lot of like negotiations in the past. There's a lot of people that are working like at my level. They're actually looking at these roles at like 30k. Give them numbers, give them company names, give them like candidate names, give them whatever like pieces of information that you can actually give to actually make this real. Like, don't make it subjective. Don't leave it open to interpretation. I think it's a shame that it would actually get to that point, because sometimes I get candidates say to me as an agency recruiter, like, oh, I want 40k. I'm like, oh, really? Because I think at your experience, we'd be looking at least like 50.
Yeah.
But then again, this could be from a hiring company's perspective. I'd say don't avoid that conversation, but just approach it with just a little bit more. Yeah, just approach it with facts, approach it with a little bit more empathy, because, put yourself on like the hiring manager's like shoes. They're going through the process under the impression that you are looking at like 25, and then they know that it is like a little bit lower as well, but they're under instructions from, hey, HR, like the finance department, that this is what they're looking at, and that you should be on 30. I would just say that, I've done like a little bit of research, kind of, biting the bullet a little bit here, and I think I should have done a little bit more in like the beginning.
I know people who are interviewing at X amount with X company. Like, I know people on my cohort or in my boot camp are interviewing at this much, and just like I would, just be honest. I think in that situation, and just say that you've undersold yourself when you first had that conversation, and if it isn't the right opportunity, it's not going to be the right one. And I think sometimes it's better to turn something down and have the right opportunity come to you.
Yeah, at least it's at the last stage though, because again, you can do the whole agreeing on an increase upon like passing probation. So, it's only going to be a few months before you actually get it up to like that level again anyway. But yeah, we can obviously take like the last few questions. So handling a situation where the recruiter keeps asking about your current salary when you have avoided it and said you're not comfortable sharing. I know, again, it's easy enough to say, like, if they just won't respect you and your boundaries, just walk away. But like, maybe you really like the company, maybe you really like the role. I would honestly just say, look, I'm really not comfortable sharing it, and I don't actually really see like the relevance to this. Is it like clarify, is it the client that is like asking for this? And if they say that it is, then I think that's a little bit of a red flag. I have actually had
Mhm.
that before, where there've been people who wanted me to send over the candidate with the salary that they want and what they're currently on as well. I said, I'm not doing that. I'm not comfortable with this. It's not relevant. I just put my foot down. Sometimes it's the company, sometimes it's the recruiter. So actually get to the core of like what's the source of like this issue. And if it's a big company, can you possibly also talk to maybe another recruiter in that company as well that may also be dealing with like the same thing? They may be like a little bit more understanding, maybe a little bit more empathetic about it. Ultimately, like we're like your PA, do you know what I mean, as like a recruiter. So we should be working with you to be like your best friends and get you like the best thing possible. So it's a bit of a shame that like this happens. And also just say, look, I'm working with other recruiters at the moment and I've not had to share it with anybody else. So I'm just a bit confused
Yeah,
why this is
yeah,
necessary. To make them feel a bit stupid about it. Just be like, I don't get it.
yeah. Especially if your career changing, just say my current career is irrelevant to the role that I'm going to be transitioning into,
Yeah.
and I want to be put forward at the market rate for a junior developer, not the market rate for whatever you might be doing now. You could be working part time and earning like 12 grand a year. They don't need to know that.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. I've had a question from Kirsty. So, what if you find out that others around you are being paid more for the same job?
Raise it in the pay review discussion. Again,
Yeah.
it's going to be so uncomfortable. It's going to be really uncomfortable. How do you sit there in front of somebody and say like you're paying somebody like completely different for me for like the same job? If there's
Mhm.
other people in that role as well, get that conversation going and be
Yeah.
open about it if you're like people in like similar roles. And if it does come to light that you are being underpaid, I'd literally just say it like it is. There's absolutely no reason why it's not okay. This is not acceptable in any scenario. If you're somebody that is doing exactly the same job as somebody else, you should not be being paid any different. Do not feel any,
Mhm.
don't feel awkward about it, don't feel any shame, just address it. So
Definitely. And I had to do this in a situation once where I found out somebody was getting paid more than me for doing the same job. And I just raised the issue with my manager and I got a pay rise the next day. And it was horrible. And I felt like I was going to die before the conversation, but I did it and it was fine. And it all works out. They're going to feel so guilty. And they're also going to feel like, oh my God, they might either not know or they might know and they're like, ah, damn, they've
yeah,
realised we're going to have to put the salary up. So, yeah, don't worry. Some nice comments, some really helpful tips along the way from Thomas, Andrew, and Yusuf. So thanks for those guys. I
thank
don't know
you.
if anyone else has anything else to say because we are at the 1 hour point. But thank you so much to everyone who's joined us. Parul has got loads of resources that we're going to share with you. Either I think it will probably be later this afternoon, so we'll get that across to you. If you've missed the beginning of this and you'd like to catch up, it will be now on our Manchester Codes YouTube page. If you'd like to speak to myself or Parul, please feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn, connect with us on Twitter, however you wish to join the conversation. And also feel free to join the Manchester Codes Slack channel. But I think that's going to be it from both of us. So thank you so much, Parul, for joining us today. You are amazing as usual.
Thank you
So
so
thank
much.
you.
Honestly, you're such a virtual event host as well, Alice. And I just wanted to say, like, I think it's always the Manchester Codes events where like we always get so much engagement from the chat from everybody. And I think it's really helpful to actually like guide the discussion. You know, I might, make assumptions or like miss out things. So it's really good to see things from like other people's perspective. So, it makes it feel like a little bit less formal as well. Like I'm not sat here just reading off like slides to all of you. And like Alice said as well, we'll send you like the slides, we'll send you the recording. I'll send you like the feedback survey as well. It's literally like 3 questions, it'll take you a minute. Would really, really appreciate some feedback on that. And if there's anything that we haven't really been able to address, if there's anything that you're still not sure about, maybe like some advice on my inbox on LinkedIn is open, like Twitter as well. Just feel free to reach out and give me a shout. We're happy to help.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice afternoon. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.